Right.
Great.
Hey.
Something about the number 3 in most series is a hit or miss. You've got Mass Effect 3, Alien 3, and Crisis 3, just to name a few. These are excellent examples of mixed bags when it comes to quality. Then you've got the good eggs like Gears of War 3, Metal Gear Solid 3, and John Wick 3. These are examples of great quality with the number 3. Often I have thought why that is. I believe it has something to do with whether or not the third go-around on a series is actually working, and if the routine is getting stale or not. It's kind of like telling a joke 3 times in a row. Most times, it is not really all that funny. But if the joke is actually followed up with something or changed just a little bit in order to make it a bit more fresh, more times than not, it stays funny. How does this relate to Dead Space 3? It's quite simple, really. This is a story that is being continued now for the second time. Fans are now wondering what Visceral and EA are going to be doing in order to keep this fresh and entertaining. Dead Space introduced a great and innovative way to look at survival horror. The second game took that concept and just made it bigger and badder. The third game, however, takes that concept and flips it around a bit. Whether that is a good or not is what we are going to be figuring out in today's video. Dead Space 3 is, in my opinion, not a bad game. But I can't help but feel that it was a tad bit of a step down from the second game when it comes to quality. Even as I write this, I am having a hard time on what I should burn the game for and what to praise it on overall. So let's put together our overpowered weapons, fight off even more necromorphs, and save the girl. This is Dead Space 3. If you have not paid any attention to the first and second game, I hate to say it, but you are going to be a little lost on this one when it comes to narration and context. I would personally recommend watching my reviews for the first and second game in the series. That way no one is completely lost here. I will be summarizing the entire plot of this entry, so that way you, the viewers at home, have some concept as to what I am referring to when it comes to my own personal opinions of the narrative. And in case if it wasn't already kind of hinted at, there are going to be plenty of spoilers in this. I will be talking about some of the major plot points of the game, and I will be talking about the ending. So, here is your warning. Let's be honest here. I don't care, and neither should you. This game has been out since 2013. If you seriously have not played Dead Space 3 or any of the other games, I would highly suggest just playing them. I'll still be here. Trust me. They're reasonably pretty cheap, and each one is good in their own right. How good is really the question when it comes to this video on Dead Space 3. The story of Dead Space 3 takes place from what I can guess a couple years after the second game. Ellie and Isaac had a strong relationship going, but they broke it off during that couple-year time frame. The main reason was due to Isaac just wanting to be done with the markers and just live his life, while Ellie wanted to do the exact opposite. From my own perspective, I'd have to agree with Isaac on this one. I'd get what Ellie is trying to do, but after going through 2 outbreaks, and during such outbreaks I had narrowly dodged being torn apart or eaten on multiple occasions, I'd want to settle down too. This perspective is both relatable and convincing. The story starts off with Sergeant Carver and Captain Norton busting into Isaac's apartment and forcing him into a mission to save Ellie and stop the markers once and for all. As you traverse through the city that you are being forced out of, unitologists start attacking you. This is when you are introduced to the combat. Now, this was the first thing that caught me a bit off guard. You are told to take cover, aim, and shoot at the unitologists. Human enemies. When I first saw this, I was surprisingly okay with it. There's just one little itsy-bitsy problem with them. They are dumb as hell. You can be standing clear out of cover, hardly even be hurt because they have the accuracy of a stormtrooper. I was playing on hard when I went through this section, so my expectations were really already set. If on hard difficulty I feel little to no threat in Dead Space game's intro, I'd have to say that mistakes were made. The only soldiers who can really lay even a finger on you are the kamikazes. these guys will run straight at you with grenades in their hands. Think the screaming kamikazes from Serious Sam, but they actually have their heads on. It's really freaking hard to miss them, especially since the grenades get a giant bright orange dot wherever they appear on your screen. An indicator will even tell you if there's one out of your field of view. The reason I go into detail in this is because the tension is non-apparent in this opening. Dead Space 1 and 2 had openings that filled you with dread and desperation, especially since all you could do in those situations was run and hope to God that you didn't die. Granted, the way forward is pretty obvious, but one false move and you were dead. In Dead Space 3, you get a machine gun and a plasma cutter. Unitologists start attacking you, then you start firing away like it's the 4th of July at a gun show. Like I said, no tension. The Unitologists eventually capture you, and upon recognizing you, their leader, Danik, says, "Screw all of humanity, I'm releasing the markers because I can." Now, having the Unitologists play a bigger role in all of this is favorable to me. They took a back seat in the second game, and it's about time we got to see how friggin' crazy they really are. Isaac promptly escapes and makes it to Norton and Carver's ship. If I was to compare this opening to anything, I feel that would be really unfair, especially considering that the game in the series is pretty unique. The point of the matter, I don't believe this is what the creators would have wanted. It's no secret that EA forced Visceral to make quite a few changes in an attempt to make the game more marketable and accessible. By playing it safe and not allowing Visceral to take risks like they had before, it resulted in a start to a game that I wanted to love, kind of underwhelming. Anyways, enough on that, we have much more to cover. You are introduced to Carver, who lost his family thanks to the Unitologists. Then the ship is promptly pelted by mines before you can reach the last destination where Ellie had been. You get your first suit and shoot everyone out of the ship in a condensed room. Again, you are put into an action sequence where you need to dodge debris and shoot mines that are in your way. Again, no tension here. I have plenty of ammo to spare at this point. True, the footage that I'm showing here is mainly from my New Game Plus playthrough, but even on my initial playthrough, I was muscling through it pretty well. Once you get to an abandoned ship, you are introduced to the weapon crafting system. Now, I have a lot to say on this, but we are going to save that for another time. If I was to start talking about it now, I wouldn't stop. The main point of the weapon crafting system is to utilize Isaac's engineering background. I do like this concept, but there are many reasons as to what they did wrong with this system. You explore the ship and fight off necromorphs and eventually find Ellie. You are promptly reminded that Ellie and Isaac had a relationship as Norton French's Ellie. After a little drama, you depart for another ship that has a shuttle that can make it to the planet that the ship graveyard is hovering over. As things progress, tensions increase between Norton and Isaac. This becomes a reoccurring thing throughout the story. Once the shuttle is fixed, the group sets out to the planet, and the shuttle is swiftly destroyed since, like Isaac said, it's a real piece of crap. Once arriving on the planet, the crew is separated and Isaac is stranded in a never-ending blizzard. As you progress through here, Isaac needs to stay warm since he will freeze to death in a matter of minutes. As you make it to a suitable shelter, Isaac is told by one of the dying crew that there are snowsuits in the bunker, but that there are possibly more necromorphs inside. You fight through the bunker and get the Arctic survival suit. Suit variants make a return in this too. They are purely cosmetic though after this. Once you catch up to the crew, the Unitologists find you and start attacking. How they tracked you all the way out in the middle of nowhere is revealed later. It is pretty apparent as to how they find you because of someone's obvious piss-poor attitude. You get through the ambush and then end up at your next location, the Giant Specimen Lab. This is when things get a little more twisted, and some of my favorite parts of the story. You are informed that the Giant Specimen is able to locate a machine that will allow you to possibly turn off the marker signals. The question of whether or not if it will work will be answered, of course. After a couple of skirmishes, extracting the signal from the creature, a boss fight, and finding out that Norton was the traitor who called Danik's men to the planet all along, no surprises there, you come across an alien life form that is able to decipher the signal and put together a codex that will allow them to turn the machine off. But you learn that if the machine that the aliens put together is turned off, it will awaken the moon that you are on, which turns out to be a giant frozen necromorph. of which is capable of consuming worlds. Unfortunately for Isaac and friends, you are trapped in the room full of thermite gas that can burn you alive thanks to Danik. On top of that, he takes the codex so that way he can awaken the moon. You are forced to leave Ellie behind, and this makes Isaac go on a bloody rampage until he gets to the old alien ruins where the machine is at. After fighting through different variations of necromorphs and unitologists alike, and solving some puzzles, you finally arrive at the final battle. Danik preaches about how everyone must be made whole and how this is the only way that the human race can transcend. Oh yeah, and it is revealed that Ellie was still alive and Danik is holding her captive. Carver throws the codex to Danik, prompting him to let go of Ellie. Danik gets shish kebabbed by a stalagmite and the moon awakens. This part I did appreciate because you are literally ripping apart a giant-sized necromorph with its own markers. It's kind of ironic when you think about it. After destroying the brother moon once and for all, Isaac and Carver, you forgot that he was even here, didn't you? Fall off screen, presumably dead. Ellie is then seen in a spaceship trying to hail Isaac with no response. She goes on into space, leaving everything behind in hope that the threat of the markers is finally done and over with. Man, what a freaking ride this is. It's definitely not as good as Dead Space 1 and 2, but it is a decent story, though nonetheless. I was entertained throughout, but I felt little to nothing for a lot of the characters' deaths in the game. For example, when Buckle died, I didn't feel much since we didn't get much time with him. Serrano was pretty much the same since she just cried and freaked out half the time. On top of that, Norton was just a jerk throughout the entire game. So yeah, I felt next to nothing for a lot of these characters. The only reason why I even remotely care for Carver is because I have read the novels and he stands in as your co-op partner whenever you are in a co-op game. See the issue here? Dead Space 1 and 2 had characters you genuinely cared about because you spent time with them, even though it was mostly through video and audio chats. Not to mention the things that they are put through makes them react differently because they are put into different situations. Hammond from Dead Space 1, for example. You see him scared, brave, empathetic on several occasions. You really did feel for the guy when he gets killed right in front of you. What I am trying to say here is that the story would have been way better if each character was given a bit more time to be developed, rather than wondering if Isaac and Ellie were going to give each other the suck. The villain Danik also got this treatment. When each of the villains died in the first and second game, you felt glad that they were dead and that they deserved every ounce of pain that they received. Granted, Tideman did try to save people, but he was also following his own agenda as well. If I was to rate the story alone, I'd say that it is interesting, but it needed a bit more time in the oven. Rumor has it that the original story was supposed to be a lot more darker and only taking place on Tau Volantis. Isaac and friends would be working close together and they would all be getting picked off one at a time, while Isaac is struggling against a darker version of himself. Honestly, I love this concept, and apparently it was going to be a really messed up story. But EA did not want this and forced Visceral to rewrite it and come out with this story instead. Again, not terrible per se, but it is apparent that this was not Visceral's best work. They were obviously being held back. I absolutely hate how easy the game can be, but I absolutely love some of the things that the game brings to the table. Now we get to talk about exactly what I have been wanting to touch on this whole review. The gameplay. Dead Space 3 is incredibly fun to play, but it is also super easy to break. If you are playing with a friend, it does get a tad bit harder, but that is about it. When you get to Chapter 2, you are introduced to the weapon crafting system. What you are able to craft is really based on how well you explore and how far your imagination can go. Your willingness to explore the condensed world of Dead Space 3 will yield you a wealth of parts and frames that will allow you to craft the kind of weapon you want to make. The more parts you have, the more possibilities you have. You want to make a plasma cutter with a knife on it? Knock yourself out. You want to make an assault rifle with an energy shotgun on the bottom of it? Go for it. You want your bullets to be burning through enemies with acid or fire? Do it. Like I said, If you can imagine it, you can make it. What does balance this out a bit is the strengths and weaknesses of each weapon that you put together. You may have an assault rifle with 3 barrels that can blow through bad guys, but you will run out of ammo pretty fast. You may have a line gun that can cleave a dude in 2, but its firing speed and reload time is really going to suck. The way you break this is with upgrade circuits. These things are what will turn your weapons from improvised Frankensteins to the right hand of the Grim Reaper himself. These circuits can be found via blue boxes that are hidden in the environment or in locked rooms/chests. The more of these you have, the better. Don't be a dummy like some people and sell them for resources. They are actually really useful. You know how I was telling you that the rifle you had was going to burn through ammo like I do with cheese and salami? What if I told you that you could extend that clip or give it more damage so that way you don't have to use so many bullets? Remember that line gun? How about a module that will decrease that reload time and give it a faster fire rate? The answer to all these questions is, of course, yes. Is it satisfying to build that ultimate weapon? Of course it frickin' is. But at the same time, when you build a weapon that basically sticks the middle finger to every enemy in the game, this, yet again, takes away from the tension of a survival horror game. You know, the very thing that this game is supposed to be. To make matters a little more annoying, EA shoehorned microtransactions into this system as well. If you pay real money on resource packs, you will get souped up versions of random parts and a massive amount of resources.
Hey there, kids! Are you having a hard time dealing with them dirty necromorphs? And I got a deal for you. Activate that bench there and select our shop in order to access our brand spanking new top-of-the-line resource and weapon packs. For a measly $4.99 plus tax, you will get 3, count them, 3 random Mark 5 premium parts. It ain't gambling, it's a surprise mechanic. Who said that you had to play fair? They sure as heck aren't. So why don't you go and even up those ads with the epic resource and weapon pack? I ain't here to rob you. I'm here to save you time. And time's money. So, in order to go and save you even more time, I'll even toss in some nice boosters to your resource supplies. That way you can keep crafting to your heart's content. Just hear from one of our satisfied customers.
I was very satisfied with my purchase of the Windsor's Epic Resource and Weapons Pack for Dead Space 3. I was able to bring the fight straight to those dirty necromorphs.
By now, we got salaries to pay.
Take note that this is the only way to access Mark V gear. Hypothetically, if the servers were to be shut down or if you have no internet connection, you cannot access these parts. They are exclusive to this system only. This is borderline pay-to-win stuff here. I am fully aware that you can just collect ration seals by dropping a scavenger bot in random locations in order to buy these packs for free. But the system is still there regardless. This is another example of why microtransactions shouldn't exist in AAA games. This makes me feel like I am purchasing booster packs in a mobile game instead of working my way up. So to those of you who disagree with me after all of this, you are wrong, I am right, let's move along. The gameplay mechanics really haven't changed since the second game, so I'm not going to dive too deep into how combat works. The real changes made here is the co-op and some door mechanics. The co-op is a great addition that I thoroughly enjoyed, but like I said before, with a weapon crafting system that breaks the game, it makes the game a breeze, even on hard or impossible difficulty. The story does change a little here or there because you have Carver with you 100% of the game when you play in co-op. The game also introduces co-op specific missions. You can get some pretty awesome loot, and they provide more backstory to Carver's character. What I really liked about it even more was that during these segments, Carver would see things only the co-op player can see, making the person who was playing as Isaac witness Carver freaking out at something that isn't even there. You would even experience cutscenes and conversations that would only happen if Carver were around, establishing more of this character, but the catch of needing to play in co-op. Again, this is a great addition to the game. I thoroughly enjoyed those co-op missions, which brings me to the optional missions, of which can be accessed both in co-op and single player. These missions allow you to uncover more of the backstory of the world and allow you to access some really good quality items. I did enjoy these missions and appreciated that they were optional and gave you more incentive to explore. One can argue that the good does outweigh the bad here. I'd have to agree, as painful as some of my gripes are, they are greatly outweighed by the qualities that Visceral introduces and keeps. You can get better weapon parts in a New Game Plus playthrough, but only up to Mark II. Anything more is in the form of microtransactions. The sound in Dead Space has always been iconic in the series. The bone-crushing sounds of your enemies or yourself getting torn apart, the sound of vents being broken into, the punchy sounds of your guns going off. Even the voice acting is performed superbly here. If anything has stayed consistent in the series, it is this. Each entry into Dead Space has always sported great sound design. The soundtrack has always been greatly dynamic. When nothing is going on, the ambience is quiet, but daunting. Once you have a single enemy attack you, it kicks up, letting you know that you were in trouble. The violins are used tremendously with this soundtrack. I am not going to be listening to it on a regular basis, of course, but it is definitely something that I would want to use at a haunted house to fill people with utter dread. Another key thing here is the visuals. Granted, nothing much has changed in quality since the second installment, but it looks great nonetheless. Things are futuristic but simple. It's familiar, but it is unique. I know for a fact that when I look at one screenshot at any moment in Dead Space, I know that I am looking at Dead Space. The first game had more of a blocky yet futuristic feel to it. It had structure, but it could be built upon. It was the first game after all. So when the second game came around and got a major facelift along with a higher polygon count, you knew that things were going to be looking pretty slick throughout. It was a change that all fans appreciated and adored. It is true that Dead Space 3 kept things relatively the same with just a couple more high-res textures here or there. This was one of those situations where it wasn't broken, so they didn't fix it. I feel that since they weren't getting any upgrades and were still working with relatively the same specs as before, Visceral didn't have a need to change this structure whatsoever. This more than likely saved them money and time. All they needed to do was make sure that their design choices were fresh and that their performance stayed up to par. They managed to make a good-looking game, and it performed really well with the Xbox 360, the PS3, as well as on PC. So the decisions made here are more than understandable and very much acceptable. Again, I do not blame Visceral too much for a lot of my complaints here. I genuinely believe that EA really did force their hands in this. The expectation that they put on Visceral was a little unfair. In order for the IP to even survive, EA stated that Dead Space 3 needed to net around 5 million copies in sales, as if EA wasn't making enough money already. Hence, why Visceral needed to make the game more accessible for everyone. Dead Space 1 sold around 2 million copies after a year being out. Dead Space 2 sold around 4 million within the same amount of time. Visceral doubled their sales from Dead Space 1 to its sequel, and it was well earned. Making these milestones is no small feat, at least market-wise. Dead Space 3 would sell around 605,000 copies worldwide during its first month of release. This was not seen as profitable by EA, despite it being the best-selling game of February 2013. This would inevitably lead to the series being put on ice indefinitely, no pun intended, and Visceral being shut down. A lot of us survival horror fans still feel this pain to this day, and we probably will feel it till the end of time, or until something like Dead Space is released, ultimately remedying that pain. I ultimately did enjoy this game. It's been years since I have touched it, and I still find enjoyment in it. As a hardcore fan, I really do understand why people didn't like it all that much. People who were really passionate about the series really did rip it a new one, but its qualities cannot be denied. If I was to recommend it to anyone, it would be to fans of the series who want to see how the series ends. If you are fresh and have never played any of the previous installments, I would recommend waiting for a sale on any of the online stores or just pick up a disc copy from a used game store. You won't have a shred of buyer's remorse. It's also included on the Game Pass for Xbox One and Series X/S users, so you can ignore what I just said if you already have that and are subscribed. It used to be that you needed to purchase an online pass in order to play the game online with friends. That fortunately has been waived thanks to EA coming to their senses on that useless practice. To anyone who is wondering about the DLC expansion for the game, I unfortunately did not have enough time to get into that since I have other games that I need to dive into and review. But you can pick it up for around $5 from what I've seen. It just adds another chapter for you to play in, and sets up a sequel. If you are still here and watching this video, let me just say thank you. This was a tough review to write, revise, and record. It went through a rewrite, and I had to re-record quite a few segments of the game since my thumb drive crapped out on me and decided to get corrupted halfway through while capturing the footage for this review. I was lucky enough to have a friend who owned the game and enjoyed playing the game as much as I did. So, to him, who is hopefully watching this, thanks, buddy. It wouldn't have been as good if I didn't have your help in this. Thanks again for watching of what is my most ambitious project yet, and I will see you in the next video.